guys, and unfortunately I have an unfortunate announcement to make because I just finished with all the clips of this video and I cannot get the system to boot up into a live operating system or even an operating system in general. The reason why being is because it will only boot from either a SCSI hard drive or a floppy diskette, and unfortunately I don't have a floppy disk with a live operating system on it or even an operating system in general on it. And I don't have a SCSI hard drive or even a SCSI cable for that matter. It's just something I never use and it's not in storage or anything. Haven't picked it up at a garage sale, so it's not in my arsenal of stuff that I have. So I think I'm going to go on Amazon, buy a SCSI to IDE adapter, and then just use an IDE hard drive with Ubuntu or Xubuntu on it in part 2 of this video. So part 1 of this video, we're just going to take a look around the case. I'm going to tell you guys how I acquired this PC, and we're going to open it up, take a look inside, turn it on, of course, and look at the BIOS, but that's as far as really we can get. And then part 2, we're going to take a look at it running a operating system. I can't wait. Gonna buy the part on Amazon as soon as possible, probably the next time we get the next paycheck from YouTube, and we can get that video up and published. Now, due to numerous complaints, I've had to create a completely new intro. Some people were saying my old intro didn't look professional enough, so here you go, guys. Is this professional enough for you? No, I'm just kidding. I hate this intro. Cue the old one. Hello and welcome to another garage sale edition of AA Computers and Technology. Had a really great day today, found a bunch of cool stuff. Found a first edition of the Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. This is the 7th printing, unfortunately, not the first one, so it's worth about a 10th of the value of the first printing. But still pretty neat, got this for $5. Also picked up a 175 watt power inverter. And along with that, we got a IBM Eserver XSeries model 220. Okay, yeah, so I could really care less about all that other stuff, but as you can see, this is the big one, literally. This thing is gigantic. I picked this up at a garage sale for $8, the guy wanted 10. I tried to talk him down to 5 because I don't feel comfortable with paying over $5 for any machine. Don't ask why, it's just one of those things. But he would only go down to 8, and I could not refuse it because I really wanted this thing. I popped it open, saw it had 2 Pentium IIIs in it. It has almost a gig of RAM, a lot of stuff inside. I'm going to pop it open and show you guys in just a minute, but first let's take a look around, check this thing out because it is really cool. As you can see right now, we are taking a look at the front, and the case is just beautiful. It's in great condition, none of the panels are missing. I did have to clean it up a little bit. It looked like it had been sitting outside for quite a while. I had to clean all the dirt off it, I had to go inside, blow everything out. It wasn't too dirty and it wasn't too hard to get everything clean to this point. But it did take some effort to get this thing back in working order. But now it's functional. I already powered it up. We had a first run. I recorded it. I will put it up in just a second after we take a look around this thing. But first, starting from the front, you can see that this thing actually looks pretty modern despite the fact that it's almost 20 years old, or is 20 years old actually. Let's go ahead and pop open the grill right here. You can see our IBM logo right here. There are some indication lights. One is a error light, hard drive, power, and then you can see our Intel Pentium III badge. X Series 220 is labeled right here, and then all the way at the bottom you can see the eServer logo. Let's go ahead and pop it open. To get open, there's a nice little indentation right here, so all I have to do is place my thumb and pull. Maybe that's not going to work as well as I thought it would, so going to go for a different approach. Pop it open, the panel swings open, and you can see our CD-ROM drive, floppy drive. There is a extra bay if you want to throw in another 2.5 inch drive, like another floppy drive or maybe a zip drive or something like that. Unfortunately, this model does not have hot swappable drives. I'm not sure why. I looked it up online and some of them did, where you could just latch it out and pop out the drives, but this one doesn't, unfortunately. Kind of disappointed, but what am I going to do? Can't really do anything about that. There's another grill right here, and then there is a small air intake all the way at the bottom. As you can see, the right side is actually pretty plain. There's a couple dents and dings here and there, but for the most part, it's in good condition. As far as the top goes, it's pretty much the same story. There's a couple dents and dings here, but for the most part, it looks pretty good. And of course, the seller put some kind of cheap sticker on here, so it's going to be pretty much impossible to take off. Great. Okay, and we are now looking at the back of the system. You can see the air outtake vent for the system itself, the air outtake vent for the power supply, and then all of our various interfaces right here. You can see a PS2 port for a keyboard and a mouse, two USB ports, probably USB 1.0 or 1.1, You can see 2 serial ports, a parallel port for printing. There is a Ethernet port right here because of course this is a server and how else is it going to communicate? And then you can see our video VGA for our video out. And as you can see, our card slots are an absolute mess right now, and that's because there's supposed to be a plastic piece holding the brackets in place, but unfortunately that's nowhere to be found. So they're just freely flopping all over the place. If I really wanted to, I could just push this in and it would fall into the case, but I don't want to because then I would have to go and get it. But you can see there are 2 expansion cards installed on the system. Ethernet card, once again, this is a server, so that is to be expected. I'm surprised there isn't more actually on the system or installed inside the system. And then you can see there are 2 Firewire ports right here. So Firewire card right here, most likely probably installed after the system was purchased. Maybe might have been installed recently because Firewire, of course, is still in use. Apple stopped. Gosh, when did Apple stop using it? In 2011, and replaced it with their Thunderbolt port. So probably this was put in maybe sometime in the early 2000s. I'm not sure when this thing was decommissioned, so can't really give you an accurate date when this was installed, but probably an add-on, probably not original. Okay, well I was going to say let's go ahead and open this thing up, but when I picked it up and turned it around, the panel fell over and knocked everything on my desk over, including a cup of water. So had a lot of fun cleaning that up, finally done. But to get the system open, all you do, there's a little latch right here, you just pull it open and slide the cover off. And as you can see, this is a server, so it does have a lock right here so no one can go in and steal the components, because that would suck. After all, this thing in the 90s probably cost a couple $1,000s. Alright, so I popped open the panel as I said earlier, and now you can see all these system components inside. Right here you can see our 2 Pentium III processors. Of course this is a server, so it needed a little bit of a punch, so they went ahead and plopped in 2 Pentium IIIs. Not really sure what they're clocked at, so we're going to have to go into the BIOS and check that out. Also with the RAM, we could probably just take it out and look at it, so that's what I'm going to try to do, but not really sure what that's clocked at either. We're going to have to check that out. As I said, just got this thing, don't really know much about it. That's why we're going through, looking at the system, and I'm going to give you some facts off the system itself. So, 2 Pentium III processors. When I first made this section of the video, I thought there was only 700 megabytes of RAM in this system, but it turns out I was wrong, because when I went into the system information in the BIOS, it reads that there is 1.5 gigabytes of RAM inside this system. So how is that possible, I asked? So I went back into the system and pulled out all the sticks, and this is what I found. Now check this out. This is actually a gig of PC133SD RAM. Now this is some really high density stuff because I didn't even know they made sticks this big. But as you can see, the DIMMs are actually layered on top of each other. So you can see one on the bottom, and then above that there is another one. It kind of looks like a sandwich. So there are 2 of them. One on the top, one on the bottom. There's some kind of separator in between them, and they run really hot because I picked this up and I was surprised. I immediately let go. But this is something you really don't see. A whole gig of RAM on one stick. And that's why I thought there was only 700 megabytes of RAM in the system, because I assumed that since this was a 256 megabyte stick, this would be a 256 megabyte stick as well, but it's not. So it's actually a lot of RAM for a system that was built in 2001. And let me go ahead and switch the focus up here. So we're running 2 sticks of 128 megabyte PC133SD RAM, and then there's a stick of 256 megabyte PC133SD RAM, and then you have this bad boy. This is a gigabyte of PC133SD RAM, and that adds up to 1.5 gigabytes of RAM. So pretty intense for a system this old. Right, moving below that, you can see 3 expansion slots right here with nothing in them, and there are 2 PCI slots, both of them filled, one with the Firewire card and the other one with the Ethernet card. Something has caught my eye though. I have no idea what in the world is this. Give me it. Okay, so there are 2 of these things in the system. one next to each CPU, and my best guess this is some kind of voltage regulation for the CPU since they didn't have enough room to fit it on the board itself, or maybe if it blew you could just swap it out with a new part. It'd be really easy, you wouldn't have to replace the whole board. Either way, pretty neat. This is something I've never really seen before. Voltage regulation expansion. It's kind of weird actually, but I think that's what it is. If I'm wrong, you can go ahead and correct me in the comment section, but that's what it looks like since there's two of them and they're next to the CPU. Probably regulation for the CPU itself. I put it back in the system and zoomed in to give you guys a better look. As you can see, there's one right here under this Pentium 3 and another one to the right of this Pentium 3. So probably power regulation for these CPUs. That's my best guess. As far as storage goes, the system's equipped with a couple different interfaces. SATA, of course, is not going to be one of them because this computer is just too old. But all the way at the bottom, right corner of the system, right here, I'm not sure if you can see that, but that is a SCSI port right here with no cables or anything attached to it because, as I said earlier, the previous owner removed the hard drives, unfortunately. But it's not a big deal because it also has an IDE interface as well, so we can go ahead and throw in one of our IDE hard drives into the system, or maybe we'll just boot it using a live Linux distribution. Still haven't decided because of course this does have a CD drive already installed in it and hopefully it works. I haven't tested it yet. But we have two options. I don't have any SCSI hard drives or CD-ROM drives. Don't really use SCSI. It's I haven't found it, so I don't have it in my storage area back there. But I do have IDE devices, so we can try that if all else fails. This system is equipped with an AC Bell power supply. Depending on which of the rails you're using, your ratings are going to be different, but for the most part you should be good drawing 330 watts from this power supply. I popped my camera off my tripod so we could take a closer look at the inside of the system, and what I'm looking for is the GPU because these are Pentium 3s and the graphics aren't going to be integrated into the CPU like newer computers, so it should have a separate chip just for graphics processing, and I'm looking for that right now. That looks like the North Bridge right there. Definitely not it. Gosh. ServerWorks, that's not going to be a GPU. Super IQ or Super IO, definitely not a GPU. Some kind of storage management right there. Aditech? Nope. Adaptech, that's what it is. Nope, that's also not a GPU. There's only really one more chip I see on this board, and that would be right here. And what does that say? Savage Pro S3 onboard. So yep, that's our onboard graphics. Let me go ahead and check out the specifications of this chip. Okay, so when this GPU is built onto a card, not right here, I'm not sure if the clock speed is going to be the same, but when it's built onto a card, the clock speed usually ranges around 125 megahertz. This might be different since it's on board the board itself. They might have underclocked it, or they might have bumped the clock speed up. Who knows? But it's probably around 125 megahertz, and of course it's sharing the memory with the system. I'm going around and checking the board for any obvious defects, and as far as my eye can see, I don't see any. All the capacitors look good. There's no visible burn marks on the motherboard itself. Once again, I'm really liking this design because if a capacitor blows on this or something just burns away or something like that, you can take it out. You don't have to take the whole motherboard out. You can do repairs to it by hand, or you can just replace the entire board itself and you're good to go. You don't have to remove the whole motherboard because that's just a pain in the butt and it takes way too much time. Let's look around some more. Everything looks good. Everything looks pretty clean because once again I had to take this outside, vacuum out all the dirt and all the gunk and everything. You can see that there's still some of it left here and there, but I tried. I did my best. It was pretty dirty. Just going to take you around a couple more times. All right. And as far as that plastic piece goes, I mentioned it earlier, it's supposed to be holding these brackets in right here. It looked just like this, actually, but it was latched onto the side of the computer case, and it would swing down and lock all these brackets in place so they wouldn't be, wobbling around inside the case. I could screw them in, but I don't have enough screws. So we're just gonna cross our fingers and hope none of those fall out. Anyway, I think that's enough of this. I'm just beating a dead horse right now. So let's go ahead and see if we can't get this thing to boot into an operating system. Guess what I just found, which would have been really helpful at the beginning of this video. I probably should have looked a little bit harder for this, but on the back of this side panel, there's actually a system information sheet right here inside the computer. And look, as you can see, these modules right here are actually voltage regulation modules. So I was right. There's 2 of them for each processor. So thank goodness I was right about that. That's what they looked like, and that's what they are. Anything else that's really interesting on here? Not really. We can see the SCSI right here, which we don't have a hard drive or a cable for that matter. IDE interface, diskette drive interface, our 64-bit PCI lanes, our 32-bit PCI lanes. Everything else, I'm just going to let you guys take a look at on your own. Going to pan around over here. Really, all this information is pretty obvious. It's telling us what each of the indication lights mean, how to take the panel off, put it back on, how to install drives, that kind of thing. I mean, I know how to do all that already. Okay, so I just got out of the BIOS and I am very disappointed because we cannot boot this machine up into a operating system. Unfortunately, it will only boot from either SCSI, the floppy drive, or the PCI lanes. And I don't have an adapter for the SCSI, I don't have a SATA or IDE adapter for the PCI lanes, and unfortunately I don't have any floppy drives with an operating system on it. So really, we're just going to go into the BIOS, check out all the system specifications. I'm going to have to go back to the beginning of the video now and put out a disclaimer, because usually in my videos we take a look at the system, we open it up, take a look at the internals, and then we run an operating system on it and do a couple benchmarks. And a pretty lengthy demonstration, but unfortunately we're not going to get to that in this video. I'm probably going to make a part 2 because eventually I think I'm going to end up buying an adapter because I really like this machine and I want to put it back into use as my web server actually. Because my other web server is currently on the fritz and it seems like it's about to fail. But disregarding that, let's go ahead and go into the BIOS and check out the system specifications. So I hit the power button, image should be coming up now onto the screen. To get into the BIOS, we hit F1 when we get onto the power on self-test screen. It'll pop up in just a minute. If we do it now, it will give us a keyboard error. And we can see that this system has 2 processors, as I said earlier, each one running at 1.1 gigahertz. So this is pretty much a dual-core processor running at 1.1 gigahertz. It's pretty powerful. I mean, this is something that you could run Windows 7, even Windows 8 on this, because it has 1.5 GB of RAM for crying out loud. I mean, this thing is still a beast. Alright, configuration errors were detected because I don't have a mouse plugged in. Continue. And we want to go to setup. So configuration and setup utility. Let's check out our system information. Alright, you can see our 2 Pentium 3s. Each one has 512 kilobytes of cache on board. They're running at 1.1 gigahertz. We have 1.5 gigs of PC133SD RAM installed. What else can we see on here? Anything else really interesting? Unfortunately, I unplugged the floppy drive because I was messing around with the drive configuration to see if I could get the boot from the DVD drive, but I just couldn't, and I didn't plug it back in. So the floppy drive should be popping up there under one of these not installed tabs, but unfortunately it's not because I was lazy. I think I said a couple times earlier that the system was over 20 years old. Well, guess what? It's not quite that old. It's currently it's 2015, so currently it's about 14 years old. This system was manufactured and shipped in 2001. It actually has a date sticker inside the case, so I should have saw that before I started saying that it was, 20 years old. I saw Pentium III and I just thought, wow, that must be from the late 90s or something. But no, this thing was manufactured in 2001. Okay, so while we're at it, let's go ahead and pan through everything else, see what kind of features this BIOS has to offer. Devices and I/O ports, that should just be showing us all of our devices and I/O ports. That should be pretty self-explanatory. IDE configuration menu, primary IDE channel is enabled, so that is our CD drive. And get out here, date and time, is that right? Nope, the date and time is wrong because it is currently July 18th, 2015. So that's way off. System security, do I really care? No. Start options. Messed around in here a lot to see if we can get to boot from the DVD drive. The CD drive, but it did not, unfortunately. Advanced setup. Processor serial number access. Why would we really need that? Core chipset control. I wonder what that does. Can we overclock? Oh, IOQ def. Oh, no. Sorry. Cache control. Oh, you can actually, can you disable your cache? Really? Huh. Interesting. Well, that's some pretty neat features right there. You could do quite a bit with that. Alright, dim 1, row 1, rows empty, dim 1, row 1. Alright. So you can see all of our RAM right here. I mean, some of this I'm just skimming over this. Error logs. What errors they give us? Post error log, yes. Alright, pointing device error, yes, because we don't have anything plugged in. Memory size has changed. Yes, it has, because I pulled the memory stick out and then put it back in. Pointing device. Why do you give us 2 pointing device errors? That's weird. And really, that's about it for the BIOS. Okay, so I think that's going to be about it for this video. I'm sorry, guys, that we couldn't get a demonstration done. I'm going to do it as soon as we get the IDE to SCSI adapter. As soon as that comes in, I'll make the part 2 for this video. But if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can go ahead and post a comment in the comment section. Please do not forget to like this video, and of course, please do not forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next installment of AA Computers and Technology.